I don't know if they're done, but I'm done watching. Democrats sponsor a last-minute debate in Iowa. $225,000 per speech for 45 minutes for Hillary Clinton. Ta-Nehisi Coates strikes back, and we've got to talk about some of these Bernie Sanders supporters. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. It's a late-night show. Progressive Army. Let's do this.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
you're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Monday, January 25th, 2015. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if the Democratic Forum has ended, but I have ended watching it. And I'm just trying to find where this little noise is coming from in my system. I'm done watching it. Bernie Sanders kicked it off at 9 o'clock. Then we had Martin O'Malley, and they closed out with Hillary Clinton. Part of me feels like, not to be conspiracy theorists, but every little thing matters, right? Sometimes when we say we don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, you end up missing some things that are obvious. And to me, the entire thing was set up for Hillary Clinton to have the last word, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Now, I could be dead wrong, and you can absolutely disagree with me, but I really believe that this was set up for Hillary Clinton to get the last word. Now, she just got through presenting. I think she did a great job of presenting. I think Martin O'Malley did a great job of presenting, but there's a difference between presentation and substance, right? We get into the habit in politics evaluating people solely on their presentation with little emphasis on the substance of what they said. That being said, despite what Bernie Sanders said, despite the context, the content, despite everything he said, the takeaway that CNN, the people hosting this, the takeaway they came away with was that Bernie Sanders is going to raise taxes. I'm looking for the tweet, actually. Here's my tweet. I'll share it on my screen so that you can see it for yourself. But, no sooner than he got off stage, here it is. No sooner than he got off stage, they declared, Sanders, we will raise taxes, as though that was the totality of everything he had to say, which it clearly was not. Now, apparently, I have a lighting issue right here, and that really is going to aggravate me because I don't like having bad lighting. But that just goes to show you the emphasis that they are going to place on Hillary. Now, I seriously wonder what they are going to do for the headline for Martin O'Malley and for Hillary Clinton. And I'm so persnickety, people, I had to walk away. I had to get that light. That light was bothering me. I wonder what the headline is going to be for Hillary Clinton, because, if all they took out of everything he talked about the environment, he talked about raising the cap. One of the most significant things to me, because if you know anyone who has family that is on Social Security, I have family that's on Social Security. One of the most significant things he mentioned was the fact that he is going to propose raising the cap, the salary cap on Social Security. That's not a little thing. But I guess I've gotten into the arguments, and I didn't really want to start there. And so allow me to circle back. I'll come back to the individual arguments. The fact that we had a last minute forum and not a debate is really amazing to me, that they will pull this together at the last second for Iowa, when people have been asking for a debate, more debates, nonstop. And this wasn't even a debate. This was everyone get on stage for 45 minutes and just talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about. Or, they'll ask some questions, but let's be real. The questions are well prepared, well selected. The people are well groomed. I think only one person messed up asking their question in the whole night. That's how every question was well prepared, filtered, and prompted. So this was not a debate. This was a piece of cake walkthrough. No real challenges from other candidates. Why at the last second will they have an event in Iowa after months of demands from people to have more debates? But instead of having a debate, they have this forum that gave a platform for people to just talk. Now, I think in terms, like I said at the very beginning, I think each candidate presented well, but it's not really about, or it shouldn't be about just their mere presentation skills, because for that matter, Martin O'Malley actually had some phenomenal presentation skills. And actually, I think in 8 years, with a whole lot more progressivism in his blood, I think Martin O'Malley will be okay. I think he'll be a great viable candidate for president. He does this local politics thing that is really refreshing, right? People don't do that anymore. Politics has become nationalized. Oh, everything has become about the national politics. Martin O'Malley has gone back with the old adage that all politics are local. He did a great job comparing the overall problem with our economy, where we are trending towards monopolies. And he brought that down to a micro level there in Iowa, saying that there's egg industries. The egg industries in Iowa have consolidated into 4 major manufacturers instead of the multiple manufacturers that they had in the past. Great approach. Great job that he did presenting. But in terms of substance, you don't get any pushback in this type of format. You don't get any type of interaction. You don't get any type of cross-examination. All you get is pretty much a 45-minute stump speech. And if you like your candidate, then you're going to love what they did. If you don't like your candidate, you're not going to like what they did. Right. So, I try to be objective in the sense of evaluating them all fairly. But still, even you're evaluating them all fairly, it's the interaction. It's the actual debate that helps you purge and see some of the inconsistencies that even the most seasoned political observer may miss. We didn't get that. Debbie Wasserman Schultz robbed us of that opportunity, but she instead provided an opportunity for all of them to have this last minute hoorah. Now, here's the thing. I think this last minute hoorah is actually going to benefit Martin O'Malley more than it's going to benefit Hillary Clinton. I think Bernie Sanders is going to continue the trend. He's in some polls. He's leading now in Iowa. I think that trend is going to continue. I think Martin O'Malley is actually going to benefit the most from this last ditched effort that Debbie Wasserman Schultz put together. He's going to benefit the most, not in terms of chipping away from Bernie Sanders. I think he's going to benefit the most because his 1%, he has like 1% support. That last thing that he said about hold the line or stand firm or hold, I forgot what he said, but basically saying, there's going to become a point in the caucus that if he doesn't have enough support, that he's going to have to recommend who his delegates would go to, his caucus goers would go to rather. And he said, no, hold the line or hold firm. Whatever he said, it was great. And I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz put this together at the last minute to benefit Hillary Clinton, but I think ultimately it's going to help Bernie Sanders the most. And I think not Bernie Sanders, but Martin O'Malley the most. And I think Bernie Sanders will be fine because of his ground game and everything else. So I just, personally, I don't like the games as though nobody's going to notice Debbie. I want to talk to Debbie Wasserman Schultz for a minute. You can't run a national organization as though only a few people are a part of it and nobody else is really paying attention. Because something that Hillary Clinton said at the end, perception is reality. And the fact that the majority, I can't say the majority, I don't know the actual statistics of it, but quite a few people are really disappointed in the manner in which you have carried yourself as a Democratic national chairwoman. And then this last minute forum, instead of a debate that people have been asking for, you're doing it as though no one is going to notice and no one is going to care. And that's rather dismissive. That's extremely dismissive and condescending. So I'd be interested in seeing how her primaries go in Miramar, Florida. Hopefully I can get the candidate to at least do a call in and drop his name in terms of what he's doing in Miramar, Florida, because Debbie Wasserman Schultz needs to go. Now, that being said, we had to deal with what we had to deal with. I'm late, 11 o'clock at night, because she decided to drop this at the last minute. I mean, I could have put together a show, but, you know, Debbie Wasserman didn't consult with me. So, but anyway, the point is, here we are, last ditch effort in Iowa, and you have these 3 presentations, and I think each of them presented well, but in terms of substance, you know, it was found wanting. It was found wanting, even with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders had some great things to say, but then at the end, it became somewhat of his regular stump speech, right? In all fairness, you know, and it's good stuff that I like to hear, but a part of me wishes that he would give, well, a stump speech is there for a purpose, right? The stump speech is there because people need to hear the same message, and he needs to drive it home. One question that Bernie Sanders could have answered better would have been the question about Hillary Clinton being a woman, and does that mean that she's going to naturally be better on women's issues? I think he did a good job of answering it. I just wish that he would have taken that opportunity to completely eviscerate that premise, because that premise is a prevailing premise that everyone insists on promulgating. Sorry for all of the alliteration, but seriously, like, how many times can people get away with forwarding this idea, this erroneous idea that a woman is naturally going to be better on women's issues? I mean, for the love of God, Carly Fiorina disproves that theory, right? So a woman is not necessarily going to be better for women on women's issues, no more than a Black person is going to be better than anyone else on African-American issues. Case in point, Ben Carson, Herman Cain, even Barack Obama. Barack Obama has not been particularly beneficial to African-American issues. Not that I, you know, had any other expectation to the otherwise, right? But this entire premise is something that I wish Bernie Sanders would have completely eviscerated. Maybe this wasn't the time. Maybe this wasn't the place, but it was the question. And I really wish he would have just kind of not destroyed the question asker, the person who asked the question, but really would have demolished that premise, because it's something that people very subtly promote. And it's time for that to come to an end. So again, that was Bernie Sanders' 45 minutes. Martin O'Malley's 45 minutes was all local politics. And I think that was actually a brilliant move. Neither Bernie Sanders nor Hillary Clinton made this forum about Iowa like Martin O'Malley made this forum about Iowa. And I think a lot of times, because of the trend in American politics, we have moved into all politics being national rather than the adage all politics. I think it was which Speaker of the House back in the 80s? What's the Speaker of the House that was there? Tip O'Neill. I believe Tip O'Neill was one of the main people who promoted this idea that all politics is local. Martin O'Malley nailed that. Like, let's call a spade and fair. You know, a lot of times you get tired of his local stories. He always says at these national debates, but at this local forum, those small anecdotal stories were very powerful. And that's why I think he's going to benefit the most from this. I don't think he's going to pull it out and actually pull a win, but you know, he's going to see a little bump, and any bump is significant for Martin O'Malley. So, and then of course, Hillary Clinton was Hillary Clinton, talking about the fact that she can work with Republicans and get stuff done. And the subtext of that conversation to me is merely the fact that Hillary Clinton is triangulating already. And we know the results of triangulation. We know the results by virtue of her husband, by virtue of Barack Obama. We know the results of triangulation. And if you are progressive, that's not what you want. You don't want a presidency that's all about, let's just get done whatever we can get done. And I think that's one of the most disappointing things about Hillary Clinton. I know a lot of people have different things that they're pissed off about Hillary Clinton, different flashpoints that make them disgusted with Hillary Clinton. But in this case, to me, the worst thing about Hillary Clinton is that she's convincing a good percentage of so-called progressives, progressive-leaning people, that the way we should carry ourselves is to just get done what we can get done and don't go for anything else. I think that is one of the most dangerous ideas, and that's what she promoted for about 45 minutes. On top of trying to convince us that she was progressive, or on top of trying to convince us that she's going to be good for the youth vote, or concerned about anything else other than status quo, or trying to convince us that she was discussing, you know, the most disingenuous thing was when she was like, her speech in China, when she said women's rights are human rights and human rights are, when she tried to convince us that that was indicative of her support for income equality or attacking income inequality. Yes, an argument can be made that women's rights must intrinsically or automatically address income inequality, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're focused on income inequality. Case in point, her time at Walmart. Her time at Walmart is often heralded as her promoting the value or supporting women's rights and promoting women in higher up positions, while simultaneously supporting a corporation that was detrimental to people living on the minimum wage. So while she's promoting women in the workplace, which is great, she's working with a company that's detrimental to people who live on minimum wage. So just because you're promoting women's rights in China does not equate to you fighting against income inequality. But she pulled a fast one, and I'm sure her supporters are like, right on. Hell yeah. Hillary supports equitable income distribution because she fought for women's rights in China. Somebody's going to say that. Guarantee you. Watch your timeline. But if it had been a debate, then someone like Martin O'Malley, and I say Martin O'Malley because Bernie Sanders still refuses to attack Hillary Clinton. I respect that. Martin O'Malley, on the other hand, ain't got nothing to lose, so he doesn't. Martin O'Malley would have called that out and said, that's just completely disingenuous. You fighting for women's rights is not the same as fighting against income inequality. And he could have, at the drop of a dime, brought up the same example about Walmart, but we were not given the opportunity for a debate. We instead were given 3 45-minute speeches and interviews. And you have Debbie Wasserman Schultz to thank for that. All right, folks, the phone lines are open. What did you think about this? 857-600-0518. What did you think about the forum? What did you think about the debate? Or I'm sorry, not the debate, but the forum. I don't know. I don't know if it was worth me starting my show really late, but hey, it is what it is. Upstate Raider in the chat room said he or she, I'm not sure, or non-gender conforming, didn't listen. He or she, non-gender conforming, they don't need to know. And then their final statement was, Bernie is unabashedly greater a greater quality leader. So I just kind of destroyed their comment. Let me read it again. They didn't listen. They don't need to know more. Bernie is a greater quality leader. Oh, okay, let's read some more comments here. I like this from Death of Lepers. 2/3 of the forum was lackluster. I wonder which portions were considered lackluster. All right, I want to talk about something else here. I want to talk about the $225,000 per speech that Hillary Clinton has been raking in. That's not a small amount of money. Morning Joe, those of you who were listening or in the chat room during the forum, you overheard me prepping up some video of Morning Joe when they were discussing Hillary Clinton's $225,000 per speech for 45 minutes. The couple is now, the Clintons are worth $100 million. But despite being worth $100 million, she was still giving speeches leading up to her declaration that she was going to run for president. Morning Joe and Mika and Willie Geist, or whatever his name is, they started unpacking how problematic this was, because this is Hillary Clinton intentionally doing things that's going to fuel her rivals, whether it be Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. You know, she's doing these things leading so closely to the nomination, or to the declaration of her candidacy, that is completely detrimental to her candidacy, but still she did it. And if she's worth $100 million, what's passing up $225,000? What's passing up $1 million? You're worth $100 million. What's passing up $1 million so that you can make sure that you're not self-sabotaging your campaign? But she did not take that route. She decided to continue to give these speeches for organizations, these major banks, major corporations, Goldman Sachs, all of these, and I don't want to use the word establishment here, all of these corporations who would benefit the most from having access to a president. And in this interview on yesterday, where she was on Meet the Press, which, by the way, Bernie Sanders was on just before her, and they asked Bernie Sanders about reparations, but they did not ask Hillary Clinton about reparations. But we'll leave that. We'll discuss that when I come to the Ta-Nehisi Coates Strikes Back. On Meet the Press yesterday, she discussed that these speeches were not about these corporations wanting anything from her. They just liked her so much. They just liked what she had to say so much. They just loved her recounting stories of the Osama bin Laden raid, that they were willing to pay her $225,000 for 45 minutes. This is the thing that I don't. How can I say this? Because I'm contradicting myself in my own head right now. So people who say things like this simultaneously don't think some people are going to notice, and don't think some people, or don't care that other people are going to notice. This is what I mean. Hillary Clinton saying something like this on Meet the Press on yesterday, that Goldman Sachs giving her $225,000 for a speech, and they're giving it to her simply because they want to hear her speak, not because they want access to arguably the next president of the United States if Bernie Sanders doesn't have anything to say about it, right? She's saying something like this, and she really believes, or she has to believe, that a whole group of people are not going to think twice about it, and they're going to take her at her word. Those are her supporters, while simultaneously not really giving a damn that people like me, who see right through it, call her on a bull. So it's kind of like simultaneously, like, it's like, forget about any veracity, forget about any truthfulness, forget about the absurdity of the assertion that they want your story so bad that they're going to pay you $225,000 for a 45-minute speech, the same speech that they could download off of YouTube. When in reality, everyone knows that that type of money for 45 minutes is not about what you're going to say in front of the audience. It's about what you're going to talk about behind the scenes. It's all about access. This is why major media outlets, they get paid big amounts of money just so that their journalists can have access. Scratch that. Let me reverse that. So that people of interest can have access to their journalists, right? It's all about getting access to people who can forward your interests, either through policies like the president of the United States, or through public relations like journalists. So it's all about access. And to think that enough people aren't thinking such that you could get away with saying something as absurd as $225,000 for 45 minutes is not about access, but rather about your amazing public speaking ability, is beyond disingenuous. But the sad reality of it is that she is proving me to be the fool. Hillary Clinton has proven people like me to be the fool because her supporters just don't care. They don't care enough to think about the absurdity of what she's saying. If Bernie Sanders comes around and after this election and after his term or whatever the results of the election is, and he comes around and tries to tell me that he was paid $500,000, $250,000 for a speech, and it was all because they liked what he had to say, I will call flag on the play. I don't care who you are. Barack Obama, great speaker, but who's paying him $225,000 just to hear him speak? It's about access. It is always about access, because how can you get the ear of someone who can influence your destiny or the destiny of your business? I've got a crying buddy here. My buddy has a little fever. That's all right, buddy. Here comes mine. Oh. Actually, his fever is broken. I think that's a woke up in the middle of the night. Maybe I'm too loud. Maybe I'm too loud. I'm not too loud, buddy. All right. All right. So anyway, there you go, folks. I don't know if I should this is a good spot as any to take this caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, or question? Actually, PJ, what's on your mind?
Thanks, man. How's it going?
It's going good, man.
Hope the little tech gets better soon. I'm gonna say this nice and slow because I tend to stutter and ramble.
Not a problem.
It was unquestionable that CNN, Chris Cuomo in particular, was disproportionately more aggressive towards Bernie than to O'Malley, and certainly than towards Hillary. CNN is a subdivision of Time Warner. Time Warner is the seven top donator to the Hillary Clinton campaign. If this forum does anything to anyone, it should enlighten people how corrupt money in politics makes the entire discussion. BernieSanders.com. Donate. Get this crap out of our airwaves, out of our discussion, out of our lives.
And think about this, PJ. Think about this, PJ. What was the law passed? And I can't think of it off the top of my head. Someone in the chat room help me out. The law that President Clinton, the Media Act, that actually opened up the market to these conglomerates, these media conglomerates. They got rid of the equal airtime where opposing ideas had to be on the air. You know, it really paved the way for exactly what Hillary Clinton is benefiting from. Now, clearly, I'm not saying—
Is it the Fairness Doctrine? Is that what you're
it's the Fairness Doctrine, but it's also a law that they passed that essentially opened up the profit motive in businesses and then allowed all of these major conglomerates, media conglomerates, to take place. Now, this came at the hands of Bill Clinton, if I'm not mistaken. I'm really just going off of what I remember. But the point is that it's one big scratching your back, scratch my back, right? It's these policies that money gets access to these politicians, and these politicians are going to enact policies that are going to benefit these corporations, and these corporations are going to turn around and give more money to these politicians, and it's a never-ending cycle. It's a never-ending cycle, and unless you're right, I think the last thing you said was get money out of politics. Unless we do that, we're never going to get rid of this endless cycle of perversions, because honestly, like you said, what we saw tonight was one big setup to me for Hillary Clinton. And I think Martin O'Malley may have stole the show because he had the most to win. But let's not get it twisted. This was about Hillary Clinton, and I'm going to show this on the screen. I'm keeping you on the line while I do this, since you brought this up. I'm going to show it on my screen. Open Secrets. Everybody knows opensecrets.org. You go there for yourself. Here is Hillary Clinton's top contributors throughout her career: Citigroup, Goldman Sachs. Where's Time Warner? Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Time Warner over her career has given $501,000 as a company, $476,000 individuals, and $25,000 from PACs. Number 1, Citigroup. Number 2, Goldman Sachs. So Time Warner, yes, owns CNN. At the last second, they get this big rally, this big forum, because her polls are going down in Iowa. And all of a sudden, she gets the last word, and she gets to have this mass presentation in front of all of the Iowa voters. And I'll be interested in seeing how these polls come out tomorrow. PJ, you got anything else for me?
No, that's it. I just can't wait to see there were so many faux pas, especially that last kid at the end saying, I can see why they gave you this question. So now Twitter's lighting up with how everyone's saying, is CNN like planting these people or scripting the questions and all that? I mean, it's obvious to people who pay attention to politics, right, but it's open in the limelight. It's one of those real political whoopsie-daisies, you know?
Absolutely.
And it just this whole thing is going to lead to just a cavalcade of comedy in the next couple of weeks as we continue to follow Bernie's example and continue to mistrust the media and mistrust the corporations and establishment.
Thanks so much for the call, man.
Yeah, good night.
You too. But look at this. I mean, this is open. Let's, for the hell of it, let's just see. Right? I like to be fair. Let's do a Bernie Sanders. Let's see what we can find for Bernie Sanders, because I've honestly never looked. Somebody has him down as a presidency. Let's see what his top contributors are. Front goes campaigns committee targeting Bernie Sanders organization. I don't think this is the same chart. All right, I'll find it while I take this next call. I'll find what I'm looking for. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hi, Ben. My name is Tyler, and first off, I want to say I'm a big fan of your channel on Pathos.
Thanks, man. Man, I haven't written anything over there. I'm actually in trouble. I need to write an article for Pathos, but thanks a lot, man. What's happening?
Yeah, get on that. And here's my question. So I was on Twitter last night, right after Ta-Nehisi posted his latest article, and I was honestly quite appalled at some of the Sanders supporters that he was retweeting that were, treating him very condescendingly. And so I wanted to ask you, I know that's the wrong way to go about, trying to establish a good relationship with the African American community.
Well, yeah, I mean, not so much the African American community, but so yeah, you're right. I mean, he doesn't represent the African American community, but I see where you're going with it. Let me let you finish your question, or was that the question?
Well, my question is if that's the bad way to go about it, obviously, what would you say to your white listeners who are looking for a way to establish that kind of dialogue? Is that something we should just completely take our hands off and just let it go completely? Because that's kind of what I've tried to do. And
yeah,
I just want to know if there's anything at all, maybe like indirect or maybe a way we can lift some more Black voices that we can do, or if we should just, for now, just wipe our hands entirely.
That's a great question, and you're taking me right into my next segment. So I will address that in its entirety, both Ta-Nehisi Coates and some Bernie supporters that I consider bad supporters, and the best way for us to address it. So I will definitely take care of that. Thanks so much for the call, man.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so shout out to Pathos. I'll have an article probably by tomorrow. But anyway, before I answer his question, I want to finish my I wanted to share Bernie Sanders' top contributors for the lifetime of his career. The Machinists and Aerospace Workers Union, Teamsters Union, National Education Association, United Auto Workers, United Food and Union Workers Union, Communication Workers of America, Labor Unions, National Association of Letter Carriers, Postal Workers, American Association for Justice, American Federation of State and County Municipal Employees, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, United Transportation Union, Unite Here, United Steelworkers. Okay, listen, I knew this intuitively, and I knew it because of the type of person Bernie Sanders is, And I knew it because of, well, yeah, because people talk about Bernie Sanders really only taking money from the people, never from the corporations. Folks, if you believe for a second that Hillary Clinton is going to be fighting more, let's not get it twisted. She may pass some legislation that's beneficial to some of the people, some of the times. But if you believe that she's going to be fighting more for the people, then she will be the people who are putting all this money to fund her campaigns. And not just fund her campaigns, but fund her lifestyle and paying for Chelsea's wedding, $1 million wedding. You know, this $100 million, if they came out of the White House as broke as they claim they did, then $100 million right now, that came from what, the last 15 years? How much is that every year? Just shy of $10 million every year? Well, okay, I'm not the math person, but you know what I mean. If you really believe that she is going to be beholden to the people more so than she's going to be beholden to the people who are giving her money and the organizations that are giving her money, I don't know how you can legitimately justify that to yourself. And I want to add, and I'm not saying this is why you should vote for Bernie, right? I'm not going to use my airways to tell you this is why you should vote for Bernie. I'm going to use my airways to tell you this is what good progressivism is. This is what's going to be best for America. And you make the decision of which candidate is going to be best for America, right? But if you believe that this means that Hillary Clinton is going to work harder for you than she is Goldman Sachs, then I really have to question your grasp on reality. $225,000 for 45 minutes for anything means that you're purchased. You're bought, you're purchased. Your voice, and this is indicative of the transition. Now, I don't, part of me really does not believe that they've been like this. I'll tell you why I believe this. I'm going to play this clip by Elizabeth Warren. I don't really believe that they've been like this. Hillary has been like this all the time. Here's Elizabeth Warren, and you'll understand why.
He said, Professor Warren, we've got to stop that awful bill, referring to this bankruptcy bill that's sponsored by the credit card companies. So I left. She went back to Washington, and I heard later from someone who was a White House staffer that there were skid marks in the hallways when Mrs. Clinton got back as people reversed direction on that bankruptcy bill. And in her autobiography, Mrs. Clinton took credit for that veto, and she rightly should. She turned around a whole administration on the subject of bankruptcy. She got it.
And then?
One of the first bills that came up after she was Senator Clinton was the bankruptcy bill.
And?
She voted in favor of it.
Why?
As Senator Clinton, the pressures are very different. It's a well-financed industry. A lot of people don't realize that the industry that gave the most money to Washington over the past few years was not the oil industry, was not pharmaceuticals. It was consumer credit products. Those are the people, the credit card companies have been giving money, and they have influence.
And Mrs. Clinton was one of them, as senator.
She has taken money from the groups, and more to the point, she worries about them as a constituency.
Right there. She worries about them as a constituency. I don't, just based off this conversation, right? I don't believe that Hillary Clinton started off as a corporate shill. I do believe that the longer you stay in Washington and the more your position is valuable to people who can buy you out, the longer you have to fight back against the temptation of taking the money from the lobbyists, for the most part, all across the board legal. The longer you have to fight against the pressures. And I think somewhere along the line, they just completely caved in and decided we got to get paid. I think that's ultimately what they decided. They needed to get paid. Maybe they legitimate. Now, I'm not talking about Bill Clinton and everything he did while he was in the White House, right? I'm not talking about Hillary Clinton and her super super predator speech, right? I know that they had problems while they were in the White House. Absolutely had problems while they're in the White House. But on just this one particular issue, you see where she made a 180-degree about face from what she previously stated was important to her, and ultimately exposed most of America to draconian style bankruptcy rules that really has taken the benefit or the purpose of bankruptcy away, right? So somewhere along the line, they completely lost their way. And I just don't, and it's not even so much about them. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not even about Hillary. It's really about what she's doing to her followers, what she's doing to progressivism, and the fact that so many people can absolutely turn away from the reality that two major things. Number one, that the best way forward for a leader, the best trait that we should look for in a leader is someone who's only going to fight for the things that we know we can get the Republicans to work on, or to fight for the easy things, to fight for the things that aren't necessarily our values, but just for the sake of getting something done. That's what we want in a leader. When has that ever been a trait of a true leader? But now this is emerging as a venerated value that we should look for in a presidential candidate. That to me is disgusting. That's one of the number one things that bothers me about this candidacy. It's not Hillary Clinton. It's the fact that she has convinced her people that we should not try to change anything, that we should go for the status quo. That's number one that bothers me. Number two that bothers me is the fact that her followers, she's convincing them to just turn away from not only things that are progressive, but things that are common sense. That if you accept the majority of your money from Wall Street, that you are going to be holding to Wall Street. 1 + 1 = 2. If this was a Republican running that has accepted this much money from Wall Street, Hillary Clinton herself would call them on it and say, how are you going to represent the people when you've taken all this money from Wall Street? But again, it's not about her. It's about the fact that she has convinced right now a good majority of left-leaning Americans that this is somehow a progressive value and that she is somehow not going to be beholden to Republicans. All right, let me shift gears and talk about what my last caller talked about. Ta-Nehisi Coates, his article, and what I'm considering to be some bad Bernie supporters. This summer I did an article. I did a video on, can Bernie Sanders win over the black vote as well as the Reddit crowd? It was tongue-in-cheek, but the point of saying that was that there is some of Bernie Sanders' supporters are, and this is, I'm not, okay, it was tongue-in-cheek, it was against Reddit and that crowd, but I'm talking about that group of Bernie supporters who, I don't know the best way to describe them other than just their asses. They're just complete dicks. And they are more interested in winning an argument than they are winning votes. And they're more interested in proving a point, right? They're more interested in trolling all of social media for the purposes of proving that Bernie Sanders is the best candidate. And they don't realize that when you carry yourself like that, then you have turned off everybody, not from you, or not just you only, but from Bernie Sanders. And someone has sent me a video from YouTube. It's like a 30-minute long video on telling you how you should speak about Bernie Sanders. And in the video, in the first 2 minutes, it nailed it, right? It nailed it and said that, when you speak about a candidate, you're not just speaking about the candidate, you are now a representative of that candidate. And the way that you carry yourself, the way that you talk, the way that you dress, the way that you treat somebody becomes a reflection on that candidate. And the fact that we live in the social media age means that people have a disproportionate effect on would-be voters the louder they are. And so even just today, I ran into this thing with President Obama, right? President Obama, the headline read that President Obama is tipping the scales for Hillary Clinton by these very, bland comments that he gave about, how smart Hillary Clinton was, and that Bernie Sanders is like this new shiny thing. And a lot of people ran with that very angrily. And they began to attack. And when I say a lot of people, several, not a lot, but several Bernie Sanders supporters ran with this, almost like going after blood with President Obama. How dare President Obama sandbag this conversation? Not realizing that you are not only, no, let me start here. Not realizing that in a political world with a seated incumbent, you cannot run against the incumbent and win. Politics 101. You do not run against the incumbent. Now, Bernie Sanders knows this. His campaign knows this. People on the local level who are running campaigns knows this. But you know who doesn't know this? Some of these dick Bernie Sanders supporters, for which I'm describing. And so they've gone on, they go, and this is not everybody, right? I sent out a tweet about, let's ignore the headlines. Don't even address what President Obama said. It's in the best interest to just ignore it, because you don't run against the seated president, the incumbent. There are enough individuals. And even let's say it's a minuscule amount of people. Let's say that across the nation, it's 10,000 people, which I think is a reasonable estimate. 10,000 rabid Bernie Sanders or even Hillary or any supporter on Twitter, on social media, can sully the pool of people who are trying to consider who they want to vote for. And what we run into is a group of people who are so excited about Bernie Sanders that they do things that are damaging to Bernie Sanders. Yes, there are people who are as excited about Hillary Clinton and they do stupid things to hurt Hillary Clinton. But, I don't think Martin O'Malley has enough supporters to have that problem. But the point is this, is that you cannot be more interested in winning a YouTube comment argument than you are winning votes. You cannot be more interested in winning an online Twitter feud than you are winning votes. You cannot be more interested in proving a point on Facebook than you are winning votes. You are doing more damage to your candidate by running around the internet, patrolling, trolling, whatever you want to call it, trying to prove your point, all the while damaging the brand of your candidate. So this is what Ta-Nehisi Coates, after his last article, which I would call Ta-Nehisi Coates Strikes Back, he began to get some, and I did see it, he began to get some vitriolic responses from Bernie Sanders supporters, and for which he retweeted. Retweet does not equal endorsement, right? Clearly. This is, I'm going to expose your ignorance to my 500,000 followers. So 500,000 people can now see how ignorant you are. But you want to engage and think you're going to win an online debate with Ta-Nehisi Coates, and you can't even win an online debate with a Hillary bot. Now, the last caller made the same mistake. Appreciate the call. Glad you read my articles, but you made the same mistake that some Bernie Sanders supporters have been making. And it is the mistake that when we say don't engage, we're not saying don't engage because of race. That's not your only problem. Race could be a problem, but that's not your only problem. We're saying don't engage because you don't have the communication skills necessary to not embarrass Bernie Sanders. Right? You don't have the communication skills sufficient to convey a thought without devolving into this 3-year-old tantrum. Not the caller, but these people I'm talking about on Twitter, the people who shared, who tweeted at Ta-Nehisi Coates, and then he retweeted it, and now everybody sees just how ignorant some Bernie Sanders supporters are. But nobody is, he's not retweeting how ignorant some of Hillary Clinton supporters are. It is a game. It is a big game, and the game is stacked. against the outsider versus the establishment. And everything negative that is said by a supporter of Bernie Sanders, a surrogate of Bernie Sanders, or God forbid, Bernie Sanders himself, is going to be amplified through the establishment machine, for which I do believe. I mean, let's be real. You cannot work for organizations that are deeply rooted in our political system and not be a part of the machine. You may not want to be establishment, but Ta-Nehisi Coates is establishment by virtue of the organization that he publishes through, right? So it's a machine that can magnify the failings and the shortcomings of Bernie Sanders, his surrogates, and his rabid fans and his good fans, right? You must be able, one or two things. It's really simple as this. And I don't think I have to even explain it any deeper. If you cannot convince and talk in a manner that is appealing to the masses, then stand down. Stand down and just be quiet. I don't, I'm not a particular fan of Elon James White, but he says something very, very profound. You don't always have to say something. Sometimes you can just be quiet. It hurts, but walk away, because you're doing more damage than good. Now, there are far many more good supporters of Bernie Sanders and just political conversation, discourse in general, right? I'm not laying this at the feet of Bernie Sanders' fans. I'm laying this at the feet of Bernie Sanders' fans who are screwing this up for everybody. Because the only thing between having a Democratic socialist in the White House, having a real progressive in the White House, the only thing standing in the way is about, in my opinion, about 1 million people who are out there who just are being the worst representatives possible in social media land and in the YouTube comment section. Long story short, y'all go get your friends. Tell them to sit down somewhere. Tell them to chill. Tell them to chill. Now, if it is the entire conversation about Barack Obama that I made in my tweet about this morning had absolutely nothing to do about race as much as it had to do with the seated incumbent, the incumbent. You don't run against the incumbent. However, you know, Bernie Sanders, some of his supporters, you know, I'm part of Feel the Burn. I am a supporter of Bernie Sanders, but some of them came at me like, you know, I don't have time for sensitive black people. I'm like, you dumb idiot. One, it had nothing to do about race until you made it about race, you idiot. And then two, you just expose yourself to all of your followers as well as mine, how ignorant you are. And why would somebody, just think about this, if you are a certified dick and you are the #1 fan of Bernie Sanders, why the hell would they want to be a fan of Bernie Sanders? 1 + 1 = 2. It's really common sense. All right, now to the race component and the conversation about Ta-Nehisi Coates. Let's see if I can do this in 6 minutes so I can go to bed. There is the added layer of race, not necessarily when it comes to President Obama, because you're going to find a lot of African Americans have a legitimate dissent with President Obama. Right. I think that's something a lot of people miss, is that criticism of President Obama does not only come from the progressive left, it comes from the black left, which is progressive, by the way. So it's not about President Obama. It's about how you interact with other African Americans who are just as much a nobody as you, right? Just faces in the crowd, right? But it's how you treat them that really matters in these conversations. So, you know, with Ta-Nehisi Coates, when people came at him about his article, you know, with all of this rabid vitriol, man, and you know, it got so bad that Nina Turner herself had to tell a Bernie Sanders account, don't include me on this type of ridiculous conversation. But I digress. This is what I want to say about Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I hate to sound like I hate to sound full of myself, but certain conversations, certain conversations need to be handled by people who can handle certain conversations. Ta-Nehisi Coates has presented yet a second article in criticism of Bernie Sanders. And to me, the article really showed the shortcomings of his entire argument. The premise of this second article was that class-based remedies are merely a bandage on the bullet wound of the horrific disparity in Black wealth compared to any other demographic, particularly white Americans. That class-based remedies is a bandage, but the wound is a bullet wound. And he said a bandage is going to help, but ultimately it's not going to fix the problem. Right there. Listen, everybody started running and started critiquing the fact that he's inaccurately defining Bernie Sanders' radicalism, right? That's, which is true, right? He missed the ball with Bernie Sanders' radicalism, and because Bernie Sanders is not radical. Bernie Sanders is not any more radical than Dwight Eisenhower. Let's be real. Bernie Sanders is as radical as a 1950 conservative. So this is not radical. And everybody started addressing that, and then people started attacking him. Some people had legitimate things that they tweeted about, fine. But the argument falls apart to me at that line, that class-based Bernie Sanders' recommendations or policy recommendations are a bandage to the bullet wound that reparations would fix. Here's my question. What sane person would turn down a bandage from a hemorrhaging wound because they want to wait and demand a surgeon come and fix their real problem? The logic is not sound, right? Even with the bullet wound analogy that everyone uses, it is not sound when there is a real economic problem for which Bernie Sanders' economic revolution will begin to address, and it will stop some of the hemorrhaging that, yes, reparations probably can fix in one fell swoop, but saving reparations, let's set that aside. Are we supposed to say we don't want Bernie Sanders because he doesn't want reparations, and because he doesn't want reparations, we don't want his bandage of class-based remedies that will stop our hemorrhaging? What sense does that make on any planet? Makes absolutely no sense. And so to his entire argument about the fact that the liberal imagination can only go so far, and it can't go as far as reparations, it can't go as far as tackling the real root of this disparity in wealth in the African American community. The problem is, you have some people who can see this through the lens of their anger, and they try to clap back, and it backfires, and then everybody sees how ignorant some of Bernie Sanders supporters are, while they're not seeing how ignorant everybody's supporters can be, right? And then you have those who see the progressive argument and say that this is not really radical, and so you can't compare reparations to universal health care because universal health care is not really radical, reparations is really radical. Still not the right argument. The argument should be simply this. Should we press Bernie Sanders on reparations? Read the case for reparations. Absolutely, yes. But should we set aside the economic revolution that can begin to fix and stop this hemorrhaging of wealth across all classes, which will help African Americans, which may disproportionately help African Americans because so many African Americans are impoverished? And so if Bernie Sanders' class-based policies are going to address the poor and the working poor, then it may very well have a reparations style effect, because it's going to disproportionately benefit African Americans because we are disproportionately impoverished. You guys getting a preview of the article I'm publishing tomorrow. You have to address it from a logical standpoint. when you're having these conversations, you must address it from, you have to take apart the argument and present it. And I think that's why last week, even though I kind of really went at Ta-Nehisi Coates, he retweeted my video, because at least I was coming from it from a very logical perspective with a legitimate criticism. I wasn't dismissing his idea just because I didn't like the fact that he was attacking Bernie Sanders, but I did address the fact that, one, you're attacking Bernie Sanders. And it's furthermore, it's even disingenuous in the second article. Let me get back to the second article. It's so disingenuous in that second article for Ta-Nehisi Coates to reference how immoral the Clinton policies have been in terms of criminal justice and the negative effects that it has had on African Americans. For him to reference that as a passing thought and then continue on his diatribe against Bernie Sanders, that is such a sleight of hand that to me is intellectual dishonesty, because you cannot compare the impact that the Clintons have had on the African American community in this generation to Bernie Sanders' lackadaisical, or perhaps cowardice at worst, position on reparations. You can't. That's like saying here is a murderer, here's a serial killer, here's somebody who has done so much damage to our community. But you know what? Forget about that. Let's talk about this guy who defected from his position at the police station. Let's track him down. Let's hunt him down and let's execute him. So pay no attention to the serial killer. Let's pay attention to the person that shoplifted. You cannot intellectually, with any intellectual honesty, compare what the Clintons did in that 1994 Criminal Justice Injustice Act, what they did to the African American community through that, as well as to poor Americans across the country, black, white, and other, through the gutting of the welfare and the social safety nets. You cannot compare that in one paragraph, but then just dismiss it and then continue to attack Bernie Sanders because he doesn't support a policy that you and I both agree is a worthy policy. You can't do that. Not with any modicum of intellectual honesty. Those are not apples to apples. That is meth to apples. Well, that's about as good of a comparison I can come up with right now. That was the other thing that he did. That was dishonest in the second article. And then the last thing that he did that was dishonest was not so much dishonest, but it's intellectual malpractice to suggest that Black Americans should turn away from the benefits of a class-based remedy while waiting on the miracle of reparations. That's intellectual malpractice. To me, to tell anybody who is working for a living wage, who is working poor, who is living from paycheck to paycheck, to tell them that they should wait on reparations and turn away from the only candidate who's talking about addressing the current economic paradigm for which majority of Americans are suffering under. All because you want them to wait on something that you feel is the end all to be all to end white supremacy and racism in America. Is rhetorical malpractice. No, intellectual malpractice is actually a rhetorical feat of brilliance. It is a brilliant sleight of hand rhetorically. But to me, it's exactly like those preachers who tell their members that you should not take your medicine that is prescribed to you by your doctor because you should wait on God to heal you. So instead of taking the slow and incremental things that will eventually, it may not even heal you, but it will keep you alive. It may not fix the problem that white supremacy in America has created through redlining, through housing discrimination, through plunder, through Jim Crow laws, through the just extraction of wealth from the backs of African Americans and from the banks of African Americans. It may not heal you, but it will keep you from hemorrhaging out underneath these neoliberal eviscerations that have come at the hands of the Clintons. And so he's like that preacher who's telling his member, don't take your medicine because you're going to wait on God for reparations. And just like that preacher who's going to preach that parishioner's funeral, Ta-Nehisi Coates is going to continue on preaching the gospel of reparations while we have missed our opportunity to have class-based remedies that, again, would not heal America from white supremacy and racism, but it sure as hell will help somebody like me and like you who's paying for childcare while you're paying a tax bill, while you are paying, getting no childcare, no tax deductions for children. You're just in that, you're stuck in that middle place where you're getting screwed from every angle. You're paying taxes, but you're getting nothing in return for your taxes. But God, we need to wait on reparations. Listen. When you look at the economic conditions of African Americans, you cannot look at it outside of the framework of everything that led to where we are today. You cannot look at it outside the framework of slavery. You cannot look at it outside the framework of Jim Crow. You cannot look at it outside the framework of redlining and housing discrimination. You cannot look at it outside of the straight plunder, right? We're not just talking about abusive lending practices. We're also talking about the fact that for generations, white men were able to come to our neighborhoods, kill us, take our money, rape our women, and go without any ramifications from the law. And so when you see that Black Americans have $10,000 in wealth compared to $190,000 of white wealth, that is not in isolation. So the case for reparations is a very clear case that Bernie Sanders may as well look at it, right? We're talking about an economic revolution. Look at HR 40. But in the absence of the opportunity for reparations, for the love of God, can we be sensible and get some class-based policies that will help every American and will arguably disproportionately help African Americans, because we are the ones who are overrepresented in the middle class and in the working class and in the impoverished communities of America. So to answer the caller's question, the answer is this. Put me on them. I mean, everybody is not equipped to have these conversations. I'm not trying to swing. I'm not trying to swing my hubris. I'm not trying to make myself to be more important than I am. But at the same time, not everybody is capable of having these conversations in a substantive way where we can legitimately push back against these counter narratives. And thank you, false narratives. It contributes. Before I close, it further contributes to this false narrative that Bernie Sanders has a race problem. It is the quintessential straw man in which you create an argument that is arguably not relevant to the current situation that you can easily knock down. And now all of a sudden, Bernie Sanders has a race problem because he does not support reparations. Back to the question at hand. Retweet me, retweet other voices. Sean King, he's definitely got a voice that is addressing this thing with reparations. Retweet Killer Mike, he's out there pounding the pavement. For the love of God, we need Cornel West to start writing You know, if he would start writing and just stop, you know, not speak so much all the time, but have him write, that would be greatly beneficial. But everyone's not equipped to do these, but you don't have to talk. You could just retweet. You could share somebody else's thoughts, right? And I think that's the most powerful thing that you could do at this point is to, one, get your friends. Get your friends. If your friends are out there trying to prove the point that Black people need to find their place, then they are the most detrimental force against Bernie Sanders imaginable. Number two, not only get your friends, but amplify the voices of the people who are saying the right things and who know what to say and who are capable of having these conversations. And number three, support the Benjamin Dixon Show. Go to patreon.com. You like that, didn't you? Go to patreon.com/the BPD Show. I have to give a big shout out to Patrick B. He became a patron last week for $100 a month. I absolutely can't tell you guys how big that is and how much that helps. I am grateful for every dollar. I want to give a shout out to David G. He pledged $1. So I want to thank you for that $1. And I want to thank Patrick for that $100, because I tell you what, I can stretch $1 and I can make miracles happen with $1. I can do the same thing with $100. Patreon has paid for the website, Progressive Army. Patreon has paid for the chat rooms that we have. Patreon has paid for the upgrades that I'm getting. Patreon has paid for everything. So I run a small and a very, very efficient operation. You put $1 in, you're likely to get $100 out. Because I said that's just how we do it. So if you want to amplify voices that are really going to push back against these false narratives, not only against Bernie Sanders, because as I said many, many times, it's not about Bernie Sanders as much as it is about what he stands for, because I don't care if it was Bernie Sanders or Colonel Sanders. If they are out there speaking the truth about progressivism and how it will forward America and how it would help forward humanity, then I'm on board with it. If it's Elizabeth Warren, I'm on board with it. If it's Jill Stein, I'm on board with it. Whoever is going to forward the cause of progressivism truthfully, I'm going to push it and amplify it. So you can help me amplify that by becoming a Patreon, subscribing to the Benjamin Dixon Show. You can register there on my blog. Go to Progressive Army, register there. Better yet, instead of me talking about it, let my announcer tell you more about it. I'll see you guys tomorrow night at the regular time at 9 p.m. The Benjamin Dixon Show tomorrow is at our regular time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Crazy mother.
If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.